Yo and hello. Welcome to the bookshelf of Reddit, where we scour the forums to bring you the best stories from everyone's favorite homepage. Missing building is not an issue. I've been lurking for a while, but thought I might share this. This is a story from way back in my early days of tech support that I thought might fit here. Kind of a long one, but one I think anyone who's ever worked in a service profession can appreciate. Mandatory disclaimer, English is not my first language, so please overlook the spelling/grammar errors. First, a bit of backstory. I started my career in IT as a support tech for a national ISP in my country. The whole setup was a bit odd as I wasn't employed by the ISP, but by a third party, hired by the ISP. Imagine your everyday call center. This is not uncommon, but what is the fact that my company actually belonged to a competing conglomerate. The story behind this was that back when the ISP was its own entity, they had hired my company, and when the ISP later got bought, we had been doing such a good job that they decided to keep us on, even if that meant paying their competition. The ISP actually had their own in-house support as well, but we were just better at it, so we were kept on anyways. This meant that while we technically were outsiders, we ended up having a lot more access than we should have had, since all the people the ISP employed themselves usually had to come to us for help, even though we were the hired help and treated as such. It was all a bit backwards. On to the actual story. After having worked there for a couple of years, I was fairly savvy in the ways of tech support, and I had finagled my way into a lot of system access I technically shouldn't have had. One day I get a call from a lady, me. Welcome to tech support. This is Op. How can I help you? Lady, my internet is not working. Literally screaming in my ear. By pure instinct I actually reacted by throwing my headphones off my head because my ears felt like they had been stabbed. I had to take a moment, shook my head, and put them back on while holding the earpiece away from my ear. The lady was still ranting at the top of her lungs. Now at this point I had been yelled at plenty and was kinda jaded, so I just dove right back in. Me interrupting her, I'm sorry to hear that, but before I can help you, I need your name and address or customer ID so I can look up your connection. She calmed down a bit, just a bit, mind you. I think she was shocked that I interrupted her epic rant. After the usual looking up the customer in the systems, checking her connection and history and such, I conclude that yes, her connection was indeed down. This was a bit odd, since she had a 100 megabit fiber optic connection, which meant that at the very least I should always be able to see her fiber optic converter connected. I didn't. Lady, so, is it fixed? A whole 3 minutes after giving me her info. Me, not yet ma'am, I'm looking into the issue as we speak. Lady, well fix it already. I'm not paying for this crap if it's not working. Back to screaming. This is when I noticed that it wasn't just her connection. It was her whole building. Looking further into it, I found it was actually the whole neighborhood of 12 plus apartment complexes with hundreds of customers that was down. I get suspicious. Me, ma'am, do you know if there is a power outage in your area? Lady, no there isn't, everything else is fine. It's just your crappy internet that isn't working. Me, okay, because from what I can see your whole neighborhood is down. Do you know if there is any construction or digging going on in the area? Lady, what does that have to do with it? Me, if there is, I suspect they might accidentally have cut the area connection. It happens sometimes when there is digging going on. Lady, well there isn't. My building is fine. I found that wording a bit odd, so I keep going. Me, okay. Do you happen to know if there is anything happening elsewhere in the area? Lady, they're building across the street, but that's irrelevant. I don't care about that building. This is when I look up her address on the maps and come to a realization. Thanks to my access I had earlier in the day, I'd been reading some of our third line support cases, just for giggles. The third line guys were hilariously bad at writing cases, and one of them said that a landlord had torn down a building on our routers and switches which was customarily housed in a dedicated room in the basement. Landlords get discounts for supplying the space and such. Me, ma'am, do you have a window facing west? Lady, what? Me, do you have a window facing the building across the street? Lady, yes, why? Me, please go look out that window and I can tell you exactly what's wrong. I hear her walking. Lady, okay, so now what? Me, is there a building across the street? Lady, what do you mean? She is starting to sound really annoyed at this point. Me, there should be a 12-story building across the street. Can you see it? Lady, no, they're building something there. Me, okay, so that is your problem right there. All our equipment for your entire neighborhood was in that building. A building that I just found out that your landlord has demolished without telling us, meaning that all the stuff needed for your internet is buried under the remains of that building. The things in your building are fine, but the equipment that supplies your building isn't. Lady, so. Me, so your landlord just broke the internet to your neighborhood. Lady, so fix it? My building is still fine, so what does the other one matter? Now she was getting peed again. Me, like I said, yours is fine, but not the connection into your building. Those things are buried under what I assume is hundreds of tons of rubble. I can't fix it, no matter how much I want to. What followed next was a good 10 to 15 minutes of non-stop, high-pitched yelling about how useless I was. Now, we had a policy that said I could just hang up if people were being hostile, but I had a plan. Finally I got a word in, and I explained that in cases like these we technically didn't have to reimburse customers, since the outage was beyond our control, but we usually did anyways, and that I could, notice the phrasing, grant her up to 10 times the value of her service for the time it was out. I was actually only allowed to reimburse customers to a 1-to-1 ratio, but my team leader trusted me enough to let me use her levels and just approved it all after the fact. I could literally hear her perking up on the other end, especially since I had mentioned that this might take weeks, if not months to fix, so she was probably seeing 1 to 2 years of free internet in her mind. And that's when I shut her down. I simply stated that while I could, in this particular case there was simply no way that I would. The line went dead silent. I then heard her draw a big breath, but before she could start shrieking again I cut her off, saying that, before she started screaming at me, I wanted her to know that the specific reason she would not be getting any reimbursement was the way she had acted on this call. She sputtered out some surprised sounds and I took the chance to wish her a pleasant day and hung up. I then proceeded to pin a comment to her customer profile noting that under no circumstances was she ever to get any reimbursement for this outage. I then told my team leader about the whole thing, and while she was laughing her ass off, one of my colleagues came up saying he had a customer that wanted to speak to the manager. Me and my team leader both looked at my colleague and asked for the customer's name, and sure thing, she was back, baby. My team leader started laughing uncontrollably, took the headset, and while still laughing just said the best thing I had heard at that job up to that point. This is manager. No, you're not getting anything. Yes, you deserve what Op did, and no, I don't care. And then she hung up. Stressful, annoying, actually painful, but still one of the best days at that job. I have to enter all of these codes. I'm in charge of the MSP side of the small IT company I work for. We offered users the ability to have remote access to their workstations via monitoring with our RMM software, but until a few months ago we only had a few that utilized it. Since it was just a few people remoting into their own machines, we allowed them to choose whether or not to use two-factor authentication on their remote user accounts. Not my choice. We are located in Michigan, so when the governor locked the state down, suddenly we had a huge influx of people wanting remote access to their workstations. Almost overnight we went from around 10 remote users to over 100, so I decided it was too much of a liability for us to allow people to opt out of two-factor authentication any longer. I typed up an email explaining what two-factor authentication was, why it was important, that it was no longer optional, and starting the 1st of April it would be activated for every remote user account, and that everyone would need to download Google Authenticator. I went through the process of setting up two-factor authentication on an account to use as an example, and took screenshots of every step with big red arrows on where they needed to click and exactly what they needed to do, and attached it to the email. The day after I made the change, I get a call from a user freaking out saying that she can't keep up with all of the codes and she doesn't know how she is supposed to get anything done when she just has to sit there trying to enter codes all day. I asked her to elaborate on the issue, and she said that Google Authenticator was giving her a bunch of different codes to enter. My first thought was the account wasn't added properly, which resulted in multiple instances of the same account appearing in the app, something that has already happened to a couple users. I asked her how many accounts she sees in the app, and she says just one, but the code keeps changing. Then it dawns on me, she thinks that she needs to enter every code that the authenticator app gives her. Sure enough, she had written down hundreds of 6-digit pens throughout the day and thought she had to keep track of them. She was quite relieved when I explained how it actually worked and that the codes refresh every 30 seconds. She had a good sense of humor about it and actually kept the paper she wrote the codes on to show me the next time I went out there so we could have a good laugh. TLDR. User thought she needed to write down codes generated by Google Authenticator and wrote hundreds down before calling to ask what was going on. A call I took today. Me, thank you for calling tech support. How can I help you? In an extremely holier than thou tone, I need you to unlock my account. This is the 5th time I have called about this and all you can do is unlock it, and it keeps getting locked. I don't understand why this is happening and why you can't help me. I could see she called in 4 to 5 times over the last few days. Me, okay, I see you've called in about this before. I've already unlocked your account. Do you have a few minutes to look into why your account is being locked? No, I know you can't help me, I've called in. Me, interrupting her, you know nothing of the sort. You've never talked to me before. I'll ask you again. Do you want me to find out why it's being locked out? No, I know you can't help me, I've called in 5 times already, I don't want to call in again. Me, I can't help you if you won't let me. Since you're refusing my help, I can't guarantee that you won't have to call in again. Your account is unlocked though. Is there anything else? No, have a nice day. Click. Me, okay. Thank you for watching. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the stories. If you did, please like and subscribe. We'll be actively releasing more Reddit stories, so be sure to hit that notification bell to be notified the moment a new video comes out. Later, my dudes.